Alright, so we're going to be calculating the midpoint of a line segment today. And I'll tell you what midpoints are, and I'll describe it a little bit, maybe draw you a little diagram. We're going to go over the formula for midpoint. We're going to be inputting the coordinates for two pairs of points and finding the middle of that one point. We will also be reducing division or fractions to the lowest terms. So you'll see that the formula for midpoint, we oftentimes have to reduce the division or fraction to lowest terms because, and you'll see when you'll see the formula, you'll understand. So midpoint calculated with therefore statement. Never ever forget your therefore statements. You'll re-say all the information or reiterate all the information you've collected and form your true answer. Formula for midpoint. We're gonna highlight this one. Formula for midpoint. Inputting coordinates into the formula. Reducing division and fractions to lowest terms. Midpoint calculated with therefore statement. Alright, so we have the formula here. So it's capital M, midpoint of AB. And with midpoint AB, you're probably going to get two pairs of points, x1, y1, and then x2, y2. So there are your points. And if we were to draw a diagram, it would just be a line. And the midpoint is right there. Write the word midpoint. So in this lesson, we will be calculating midpoints. And the formula you will need is listed above. So this is the formula. The formula you will need is listed above. Don't forget your therefore statements, and I hope this is very helpful, and I hope you have fun. So let's begin. So determine the coordinates of the midpoint of the line segment with each pair of endpoints. So determine the coordinates of the midpoint and of the line segment with each pair of endpoints. So we're calculating the midpoint, and here are your endpoints. And then we have M being 3, 2, and N being 5, 7. And I've already gone on and labeled them right here. So M and N. Moving on. Midpoint of M and N. So we have x1, which is 3. And we're going to add that to 5. And it'll be over 2. So we have 2, and then plus 7 over 2. Okay. M of mn, so the midpoint of m and n is 8 over 2 and 9 over 2. Now, so here's the formula. Here is where we inputted our values. Here is where we will reduce the fractions. We can also change them to numerical form. Alright, so we have m and mn being 4, 4.5. So 2 goes into 8 4 times, that's how we got 4. And then we have 2 goes into 9 4.5 times. So we've got that one as well. Or what you could do is you could mix them all together, and because if you don't like decimals, then you can just leave the second one as a fraction. So it's decimal midpoint calculated, and then it's fractions, fraction answer. And then we need a therefore statement, like right away, so we're just going to squeeze that in over here on the side. The midpoint of mn is 4, 4.5. And we'll try our best to circle it. There you go. So that was our first question. So let's go through it and let's talk about what we learned with this first question. So we determined the coordinates of the midpoint of the line segment. I would draw it if I could. That'll probably be another video. But we're calculating the midpoint. And the midpoint is just the middle of a line segment and what coordinates they are. Midpoint is the middle of a line segment calculated with formula, and also has to do with the coordinates of the midpoint. There you go. So the midpoint is the middle of a line segment, and it's calculated with this formula, and the coordinates of the midpoint are what we are solving for, and that's why that our therefore statement says the midpoint of the line segment being 4, 4.5, and that's our answer. The midpoint of mn is 4, 4.5. It can be 4, 9 over 2 if you prefer to put in fractions, and I'll be accepting both answers, and I hope that your teacher will as well. Leaving that there. Alright, so we had the formula for a midpoint of a line segment. This is the formula, and I will circle it too many times just so it gets ingrained into your brain. We're going to be writing out the formula for each question that we do, just so that it's in our noggins, and so we don't forget. So the midpoint of the line segment with each pair of points, and these two are the endpoints, we went over that. M and N are our endpoints, and then we have midpoint, and I boxed it all in red. So we have the formula, and then we inputted our values into here. We inputted our values of the endpoints into here using the formula. And then we simplified these additions or binomials, or however you want to call it. We have inputting values into M equals M and N, and inputted values, and we simplified those two right there. And then what we did we simplified it, so we simplified it horizontally, and then we simplified it vertically. Makes me think of graphing with horizontal axis and vertical axis. So we have to reduce the fractions. So I see an 8 over 2, which is just 4, and then a 9 over 2, which is not a whole number. However, 9 over 2 is 4.5. And so we have a decimal answer being right there, and then we have a fraction answer being right there. I like to include as much variations of the answer as possible, just in case your teacher prefers something specific, so I'll do both always, or I'll try my best to. So what we did, we had the formula for the midpoint, we were inputting the coordinates, we were reducing the division or fractions to lowest terms, and then we have the decimal midpoint calculated, and then we have the fraction midpoint calculated, and then we have our therefore statement. Never forget your therefore statement, but everyone knows that, at least the majority of us do. And just to let you know a little bit about this, you gotta have your 3 dots right there, and always circle it so your math teacher knows where the answer is, because math is so complex and it can get pretty hazy. And and you have fun with it, like use colors. If you need to take breaks, take breaks. If you and I hope that's everything you need to know. I think we should move on now. And let's see what our next question is. Anyways, so we have midpoint P. We want to calculate the midpoint of P and Q. So we have -1, 4, 3, -2, and then we have the midpoint, and the midpoint of the formula, and I'll put this in here, midpoint of P and Q. We have the formula for the midpoint. Next, we're going to input these values into the formula like so. And so we're going to input the coordinates or the values or x and y within each bracket into the formula itself. And then we're going to reduce fractions to lowest terms or a numerical value, and let's see how we can do. Alright, so I have blue right now, but we'll see. And again, determine the coordinates of a midpoint of the line segments that are given to you with each pair of endpoints. So it's just that simple. So we're going to go with M midpoint equals, so we have x1, negative 1, plus 3 over 2, comma, and then we have y1, which is being 4, plus negative 2 over 2. Then we have another, we're moving on, and we're going to simplify the numerators. So we have 2 over 2, comma, and then we have 2 over 2, comma, comma, bracket, bracket. And then, once we move on, we have to reduce these to our lowest forms. And when we talk about reducing, well, 2 goes into how many times? It goes in once. So 2 is coming on the top and the bottom, and we're going to strike them both out, and it'll become 1. So when we talk about reducing fractions to its lowest terms, I do have more information on it, and we'll go over it in the next video. It'll probably be the first thing discussed, and then we'll move on. So 2's common on the top and the bottom, so we're going to cross them out. Let's do that with blue. I'm making a math video.
There's no change?
I'll give it to you when I'm done. Sorry about that. That was just my dad. Anyways, we're going to cross them both out, and it becomes 1. Alright. And then we'll do our therefore statement. So we have the midpoint of the PQ segment is 1, 1. There you go. Anyways, so what I see here is that I have the formula for the midpoint right there, and it was we have inputting values or coordinates right here, and then we have reducing fractions to lowest terms or numerical value, and then we reduce them to lowest terms, saying 2 over 2 is 1 because it's common on the top and the bottom. And if you're going to look at it like a fraction, then it'll be 2 over 2, so it would be full. If it was 1/2, then it would be like a half, and you would do 1 over 2, but this is 2 over 2, and the numbers are the same, so we're going to cross them out, and then it equal 1. So calculated midpoint. And we have our therefore statement, so let's move on. The next color is green. And we all scream for ice cream. So, this line segment is called RS. That is its name. And initials. So we'll do midpoint. So we have x1, so it's going to be -2, -2. then we have x2, which is minus 3, so plus minus 3. And then we have all of it over 2. There'll be a comma in between. So we'll have negative 5 plus 0 all over 2. So this is the midpoint of RS. Midpoint of RS. PQ, PQ, PQ. And then negative 5, so negative 2 plus negative 3 is 5 over 2, and it's negative 5 over 2, so midpoint negative 5 over 2, comma, negative 5 over 2. And then we have, now we need to do midpoint in the decimal form. We do negative 2.5, comma, negative 2.5. So that's our fraction answer, and then we have so the midpoint of RS is negative 2.5 and negative 2.5. So that would be, oh, we're using green. X1, X midpoint, Y midpoint. Excellent job, guys. And I think you're doing great, and I hope that you keep going with math. So we have the midpoint of T and U, T and U. So x1 is 0, and we'll do a little plus sign. X2 is negative 6, and that's over 2. We have y1 plus 0, so y1 being 5, and y2 being 0, over 2. And then we have it being negative 6 over 2, comma 5 over 2. And I'll just strike out those zeros there. We have midpoint, continue. And this is where we're going to reduce the fractions. Negative 3, because 2 goes into negative 6, negative 3 times. So, negative 2, negative 4, negative 6, bingo. And then we have 5 over 2. 5 over 2 is 2.5. And I will also give you the chance, T and U. So we'll do -3, comma 5/2. And then we'll put in a therefore statement, but only after we color it up. And let's do a therefore statement. So let's go over it once more. We have the formula for midpoint. We input the values in coordinates. We are changing the fractions to its lowest terms, either a numerical form or decimal form, and then fraction form as well. And then we have our midpoint calculated, so we're going to circle our therefore statement just so we don't forget. And then we have a calculated midpoint, and don't forget the therefore statement being the midpoint of T and U is in brackets -3 and comma 2.5. And now we have points V and O, and we are doing 1, -6, and O being 0, 0. We have the formula for the midpoint. Let's go to pink. So we have V and O. We'll color it up afterwards, highlight the important things. So we have 1 plus 0/2. And then we have -6 plus 0/2. And we are going to get rid of those zeros. We have and then we have 1/2, comma, -6/2. And then we have 1/2 and -3. But if you want to look at it as like a decimal, we'll do 0.5, comma, -3. That's a whole number. That's a decimal number. It's also a fraction number. So what did we do here? So we had the formula for the midpoints, and we inputted these values up here. Those values. And they look like coordinates, and they are coordinates if we were to draw this on a graph. And then we're going to find the midpoint. And now when we talk about the midpoint, we have to calculate the midpoint with the therefore statement. And we have to use the formula when we calculate midpoint. And then we have to input the values into the formula when we calculate midpoint. And then we reduce the fractions and the division to the lowest form, changing it to fraction and a decimal. My apologies. And then we have reducing I'll give you a moment to write it down. So formula for the midpoint, and inputting values and coordinates into the midpoint formula. And then we reduce those fractions in division to a lowest form, changing it from improper fractions or fractions to decimal. So we have the decimal midpoint calculated and the fraction midpoint calculated. So this one's fraction and this one's decimal. So the midpoint of VO is, let's do decimal first, 0.5, (-3), or a half and (-3). And that's the middle of a line segment, honey. And now it's time to color with pink. So we have these, and put that into here. And then VO, 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 VO. Anyways, now it's time to color with purple. So we have W and Z. So we have midpoint. Okay, so x1 being -4, put that in brackets, plus 5 minus 5 plus plus 4. So it's -5 plus 4. Alright. And then we have our therefore statement. Alright, so that was the end of this video. I hope you found that helpful. We can go over this last question. And so I have the formula. I input these values into the formula. I have a fraction version and a decimal version, and then we also have our therefore statement as well. I hope you found this helpful. I'm sorry I was distracted today, but thank you very much.